Hello and welcome to this edition of the Dev Talks. It's been a while since I did one, but been wanting to get back to them. Today I'm going to be talking about hardcore and why I think it's interesting from a player's perspective. And we'll do a series, few more on specifically hardcore. Before I get started on that, I wanted to give a little bit of a my background with video games. And while I do that, I'll play some stuff in the background so that it's not just me talking the whole time. But yeah, let's go like that. All right. So my background is that I am an extremely competitive game player, gamer, whatever you want to call it. When I was a kid, I was in the top 27 for Warcraft 3. I made Masters in StarCraft 2. Never Grandmaster. Never was quite that good, but I was number one in all of Masters. When it comes to WoW, I parse high. I lead guilds. I get into things. Like, I get very, very into things. And for that reason, I find hardcore to be very interesting because it, in general, it's harder by dint of the fact that you only have one life. So that's interesting to me. If I play Diablo, I'm almost always playing on hardcore. If I'm playing, I mean, I like associated genres like roguelikes and roguelites, and we'll go over what the difference between those two things are in another video, because that is actually really an important distinction on kind of where this genre is going in the future. And yeah, like I said, I'll cover that in the future. So my perspective on video games is kind of from that very high performing standpoint. And so, that's not a brag. It's just, that's where my perspective is, so you can understand where I'm coming from. And then my sons, I have two of them, and one of them just refuses to play hardcore. It's not interesting to him. He's also a relatively high performing gamer. He's really coming along strong, but he's like, Dad, that's crazy. If I die, it's a waste of my time. Now, my perspective is it's not a waste of time if you enjoy it. And so, let's say you play for 20 hours on a character and he dies. Well, it's not a waste, because if you enjoyed it, then you got 20 hours of enjoyment. It's like the same as watching a movie or any other form of entertainment. So just a different perspective. And then my youngest son, he's like, well, Dad, we'll just do whatever you want to do. Let's just have fun, right? And he's kind of more of a have fun gamer, and he's just wants to play, so he doesn't really care. So I have a lot of perspectives just within my own household. And then, I can go on and on and on about people I know and how they feel about it. But this video is more about why it's interesting, and I kind of already led into that. You have one life. One life is interesting because it's real. It's interesting because it's similar to real life in that way. I mean, it'll never be real life, but it's similar insofar as you die once, it's over, right? Your character, you screw up, and that's that. So that's interesting. That plays into fear of loss. So that is one part of the fear of loss, but fear of loss, it kind of forces you to plan out what you're doing, slow down for a second, and to actually think about what you're doing and move forward in a way that is more cautious, more thorough. And not just like, I don't know how much you guys know about WoW, but these days in like retail, which I don't play retail, but people walk in and you AoE everything, right? There's just no caution. It's just throw everything at the game and you clear stuff. And to me, that's nonsense. I don't like that kind of stuff. I don't think that the lack of planning is a good thing. So I find that hardcore slowing everything down is really nice, at least from my perspective. Another thing is the rush you get when you get into a sketchy situation, and how that affects what your body and how your reaction is. Like, for me, I got into a situation, and maybe I'll play it at some point for you guys, fighting King Lucula. and doing it at a way too low level. And the guy I was fighting it with almost dies. I almost die. It took me 2 hours to calm myself down, man. My heart was beating so hard. I don't know how much you guys know about WoW, but let you just put your 4.5 days played into the game at that point, and to lose that character at that point without hitting 60 would just be a travesty. But it was so exhilarating. It just pushes your body and your mind, and you get super focused, and you're just going for it. And for me, I really like that. I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie as a kid, less so now as I'm an adult with kids, but um, having that feeling be able to come up and you have that fight or flight kind of trigger, that just doesn't happen for me in a regular game. But in a hardcore scenario, when you have days played on the line and you don't want to redo that, you can get some pretty interesting, you know, adrenaline rushes coming out of there, and I really enjoy that. Another thing that is interesting about hardcore to me, from a player's perspective, um, is the way the community works. So a lot of games you just kind of group with whoever and you do your thing, and doesn't really matter. And if you fail the dungeon, who cares? No big deal. No big deal. Just do it again later. So you're not very choosy about who you group with. Whereas in hardcore, you're going to be a whole lot more choosy. You're going to be more well planned, as I said, but you're also just going to choose your group better. Um, oh, three rogues? No, no, thank you. You know, one's fine, two maybe, but definitely not three, right? You want a more balanced group than that. Pally tank at 60, not happening. I mean, maybe in Season of Discovery, we'll see. But I'll talk about Season of Discovery and where I think they're kind of overdoing it there, but that's another time. Um, but you create your groups much more carefully. You think about what you're doing. You pull things more carefully. Everything is just more well thought out. So in the community, your reputation matters, as a player more. I wish it mattered even more, but WoW's a pretty easy game, and so it doesn't have quite the level of pickiness that I would like to see. Um, the other thing is you treat each other better. So you pick a game. I don't care what it is. You're playing multiplayer. People are yelling slurs at each other. They're mad at each other every time anything goes wrong. It doesn't matter if it's League of Legends or any kind of Blizzard game or any kind of competitive game. I mean, you pick. I mean, Fortnite, it's going off like crazy, right? People get mad. They don't like what you did. They let you know, and they don't let you know in a very nice way. Usually it's extremely derogatory and all that kind of stuff. But in hardcore, your life is in their hands, and so when you are playing, you have to treat each other better. Um, if you don't, they might just let you die if they're a healer, or they may not poly a mob off you, or they may not target things down, or they may not help you. Like, for instance, I play a mage, as you can see here. Um, and, well, that's my main. I play everything, but that's my character is a mage. My favorite one, my main, whatever you want to call it. Um, Look, I will protect people. I tell healers before I ever get into a group, like, I got you. Just, make sure I get my heals because I'm going to help you. I'll keep them off you, but make sure I get my heals. But if I don't like you, if I'm mad at you, this is not me because it's not my character, but somebody, if you make them mad enough, may decide, I'm not going to hit you with that Frost Nova. Let the healer die. Or I'm not going to poly something. Or I'm not going to poly something off of you. Or I'm not going to help you when you pull aggro so that you don't die. So, because as a mage, you have a lot of ability to either crowd control or kill something a little faster. And you could just let people go. If you're the healer, I mean, literally, the group's life is in your hands. If you're mad at somebody, you could choose not to heal. If you're a tank, you could choose not to taunt off, right? There's all kinds of things. So if you don't treat people well, if you don't have some patience with people and have some understanding for their mess ups, there's a good chance that they're just gonna say, screw you, buddy, and let you die. And in a game like WoW, where you have like 6+ days played at minimum at 60, that's not good for you, right? You're if that's your punishment for being a jerk, that's a pretty heavy punishment, and so typically choose not to be a jerk. Now I've been in groups where things aren't looking right; they're a little too sketchy for me, and I will try to help. I'll be like, hey, maybe thunderclap on AOE mobs, and blah blah blah. Well, trying to help, trying to guide people, try to make them a little better. But if it continues to be bad, I'll say, look, I can't stay for this run. I'm not dying because you don't know what you're doing. But you don't yell at people, right? You don't treat people poorly in hardcore because you never know when that's going to come back to bite you, and you don't want that. So that's a really interesting point to me. Is that the community seems tighter and kinder and more patient with each other, as opposed to absolutely obliterating each other for absolutely everything. Um, the next thing about hardcore that I find interesting is that it pushes you to play better. Um, I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I'm playing a game and the stakes are low and I'm just kind of in my chill mode, man, I can get super lazy. Um, I can get to the point where I'm not playing the game appropriately. Um, and sometimes that laziness starts to spill over into actually important situations. But in hardcore, you can't really afford for that. You get sloppy just one time too many or one time at the wrong time, and you're dead. And now you're releveling. Um, and I find that to be something that helps me to pay attention. Like, so, for instance, I can um, I can get pretty distracted sometimes, and then do something like run into a giant in Desolus and get your butt kicked in like 3 hits. And that actually almost happened to me in hardcore. But it's those kinds of stupid little mistakes that you have to avoid in hardcore, and it forces you to play at the top of your game and pay attention the entire time, and to think, okay, I know I have this rotation. I know this rotation's worked. I've leveled a bajillion mages going up to things. I know what's going on. But figuring out exactly what works while leveling at each individual level and trying to keep that going, because like the breakpoints in health are going to be different even, right? Um, Sometimes you get a couple pieces of gear, you're just a little stronger, blah 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 blah. You have um, all these different stats that are going up and down because you level and you get proportionally weaker than the thing that is your level now because you don't have a new piece of gear. But if you get a bunch of pieces of gear or one piece of big gear or whatever, the breakpoints all change. And so that's kind of interesting to me because it forces you to play the game more at that higher level where you're actually focusing on these things. Like, okay, right now I'm doing 2 fireballs, then 2 scorches, and then I'm uh, either fire blasting or something, right? And then the next level it might be, well, now it's better to do 3 fireballs and then a fire blast, and that kills them. Or maybe it's going to be, um, we're going to throw a frost bolt, fireball, scorch, or whatever, and you're paying attention, and then you get a crit and you do something different, and everything's just a little different. Versus when I play and the stakes aren't higher, it's probably going to be the same rotation the whole time. Probably just be, fireball, scorch, done. Guy dies. And that's it. That's the thing. You just play different. For my warrior, it meant that I never pulled anything when I wasn't above 90% health. Just don't do it, right? It's just a different way. You're being more cautious. You're playing the game better. You're more and it's just a better way of playing in my mind, because the stakes are higher, and when the stakes are higher, it's more interesting. All right. The other thing that I find to be a good thing, but I could totally understand if people say, I don't like that about the hardcore. I think it separates people into skill buckets. Um, I think that it makes it more obvious who the top players are, and more obvious who the not so great players are. Just because you didn't hit 60 doesn't mean you're a crap player. Um, Maybe you're getting some DCs. I know I had a DC death at 42, kind of broke my heart a little bit. That is my only major death on my mage. I think I died at 9 also after that because I was all pissy and upset that I died at 42 to a DC, and then I ended up dying at level 9. But my only major death was at 42, and it was to a DC, and that's really disappointing. But for the most part, the good players are eventually going to hit 60, not always. Not only they're going to hit 60, they're going to gear out at 60. Not only they're going to gear out at 60, they're going to start rating at 60. Not only they're going to start rating at 60, they're going to get further and further in rating at 60, right? Because you are making it further and further because your skill level allows you to do so. Versus if you are not good enough, you may just keep dying by level 20. I mean, I there was somebody in the guild I was in, and he had something like, I don't know, I lost count at like 25 deaths below level 20. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. But he was bound and determined to keep going, and I think eventually he hit 40, but then he died again. It was just he just wasn't that good of a player, or he couldn't keep his attention up. One of the two. Um, or, you might hit 60, but you just aren't playing the groups right, right? Things get harder at 60, for sure. Especially when you're undergeared and you're going into these dungeons and you're just kind of trying to get that first couple pieces of good gear. It's pretty easy to die. Um, and, having that extra skill gives you just more capability. So there's that. Whoops. Just trying to speed that up for you guys so that it wasn't just waiting around and then Horse right past the fight. Go figure. All right, well, I'll leave that be. Um, I find that interesting that it separates out people into buckets. Maybe that's not something you guys like. I do like that. I like to know where I'm at. I like to know if I'm doing well or I'm doing poorly. I like to know where I stand. Like things like WoW logs, I love those things. Sometimes they're a little annoying because they push you pretty hard. But you pull those, 99 parses or even the occasional 100 parse, which I have one in hardcore, or two. I have two on hardcore. It really pushes you, and I like that. I like to know where I stand. And those are interesting bits to me. So that's why I find hardcore interesting from a player's perspective. From a developer's perspective is a whole nother thing. And I plan to do a perspective on that, but a video on that. But it makes you build your game differently than you otherwise would. A game like WoW, and this is another video also, but it's only possible to do hardcore because the game is solved. It's known. Do I think the meta is correct? I actually don't. But I can tell you that I think that if you didn't know what you're doing in WoW, nobody would be hitting 60. Like no one on a new game hits 60 first character hardcore. Maybe 10th or 20th character, not first character. I don't care how good you are at video games. It's just not happening. You're not going 0 to 60 without knowing the game. With your first character, I guess that's another thing that makes it interesting. Game knowledge is important. Like think Diablo. I don't care which one you pick. For the most part, when I'm playing hardcore, I'm playing Diablo 3. I've never played Diablo 4. I have no idea. I know that most people don't like it, and some people I really respect are like, "This is not worth your time," and I value my time a lot. So I have yet to touch that. Maybe when it's like 75% off or whatever. I mean, it's already seen it for 42% off, so we'll see. But Diablo 3 is where I play a lot of my hardcore. Why? Because Diablo 3 is too easy, and so hardcore gives you that extra edge to where you have to do everything right. And When I'm playing that, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know what the mobs do. You have to know in general what the dungeons are coming. You have to know what gear you're after. You have to know all these things. Otherwise, when you go to play hardcore, yeah, you're just gonna die. And it can be fun to die a little bit in hardcore, but it's not fun to die continuously in hardcore. Diablo 3 is also an interesting one because it's not true hardcore, because you have the Paragon levels. So, but again, we'll touch on that probably in the next video. We'll probably be talking about the different types of hardcore, or as I like to call them, medium core game genres that have come out that are taking hardcore to a much more player friendly and much more what do I call it? Much more low barrier to entry style of game, and they're extraordinarily popular. So we'll probably go over those different genres in the next one. Yeah, but this is just a set of videos I'm gonna start doing, talking about the different genres, talking about my thoughts on them. Why are they interesting? What kind of people do they pull in? Hardcore, for instance, pulls in, kind of your more dedicated, more. They're called hardcore gamers now. That's more because the term for hardcore, like you go hard, but in this it's two different terms. But it's your top tier gamer, right? It's your top tier person that needs that extra challenge, and so I find that interesting. And as a developer, I look at those things and I say, hey, how can I incorporate this into my game? What can I do? How can I find elements of this? How do I get somebody to get a crazy adrenaline rush when they're playing my game? How do I get somebody to want to be a part of a community and not treat each other like crap? How do I get somebody to, actually plan what they're doing when they're playing my game? How do I get these things that I find extraordinary? They're easy to get in hardcore. Why? Because you said you have one life. You better take care of it, right? Well, how do I get somebody to feel like that without having to take their character away from them, right? These are questions that I find interesting as a dev. And they are for the reasons that the person finds the player may find hardcore interesting. And so trying to replicate some of that has led to a lot of success in the industry, but it's also led to, in general, just a better experience with games, even if the games aren't as successful, which for the most part they seem to be. So anyway, that's this series. And I hope you guys enjoy these. I am going to do quite a few more of them. My goal is to do a tutorial still every week, or at least twice a month. That's what I promised, but I have been doing them every week. And one of these videos, either like this, talking about a specific topic, or I may also do reaction videos to either like key events or to known developers. Yeah, I'm gonna expand this channel a little bit. I do want to start covering more stuff, talking more about things, opening up discussion. Like, if you guys disagree with me, let me know what you think about hardcore, right? Like, I have a specific perspective. Both of my kids have different perspectives. My best friend has a different perspective. My brother has a different perspective. Everybody has a different perspective on what hardcore means to them and what is interesting about it, or why it's not worth their time. But yeah, let me know. On that note, like, subscribe, comment, please. It really helps this channel out. I am going to expand the content on this channel. And hopefully you guys will go along with me for the ride. We can have conversations together. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys got something out of this as devs. We'll break hardcore down even further in future videos. So, all right. I will talk to you guys later. Have a good one.